Good morning, everybody. Hey guys, how are you this morning?
Doing good. How
Y'all
are
doing
you?
okay?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Can you?
I'm
I'm
hiding
good. Oh
the.
my goodness, it's like
Oh,
frozen on my end.
uh-oh.
You're not frozen for us.
Uh-uh.
Uh-oh. Is it working? Not frozen for you guys?
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
well, that
good.
works. That works fine for me. Oh, now I see Deb. Goodness. Okay, maybe it just took a second to unfreeze.
I hope I
Um,
was frozen with a good face.
I know, right? Not like Oh man. Emily, I know that a whole bunch of us have been following the fact that you had some health glitches. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling so much better. Yes, was in the ER a week ago today, and almost got admitted, but got out by the skin of my teeth, and I'm doing fine now. That's how my
Okay,
body works.
I know, right? Yeah. How about you, Deb? Are you doing all right?
I'm doing good. I'm hiding the fact that my room is in renovation mode, like spring purge and reorganizing. So that's why I
Fun
got the
times.
today. Yeah, it's felt really productive. My kids are with their dad for the week for spring break, so I've taken advantage
Gotcha.
of done a lot of
Lots of uninterrupted time.
reorganizing. Yes.
Very cool. I have been dealing with like the pollination has hit me. And if I look like I'm crying, it's good that this side is in the dark, where I'm sitting right now, because this side, it's like I'm I'm weeping just half of my face. This eye just keeps watering and watering. I'm not crying, I'm not sad, but half of me is. But Deb, you were saying you have a left eye twitch, so that
I
makes half
do.
of us with a like we have both sides of a very interesting face. We can just like put them together.
True. Yeah.
Oh man. Emily, you've got your crocheting, huh?
Yeah, I'm almost
I'm
done with this
working.
blanket.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I tried to start. My mom and my daughter and I got a cute little kit from a family member for Christmas, and we finally sat down to try to figure it out, and it was super challenging. I got like one little straight chain for a minute, and then we're like, how do we turn this? I
Like,
don't
what
know.
do we do next? We don't know. That's hilarious.
So I might need a tutorial day with you guys.
Oh, we can do that. We can manage that.
I
I
found
have
some
started a
great
new
YouTube
blanket.
videos. Ooh, that's pretty. Is
Yeah?
that a blanket?
That's pretty. It looks
Pardon?
like
Is that a blanket?
It's going to be. Yes. So it's like it's going to be a blanket. Um, it's kind of thin. It's not like a super heavy one. I'm also working on a really big, thick, chunky one. Same pattern. So I went to a friend's house, and I saw this star stitch blanket on theirs. And I took a picture of it and I sent it to my friend Francie. And I was like, hey, I need to know what this stitch is. It's so cute. It's at this blanket at a friend's house. But my friend didn't have a clue. Somebody had given it to them. They didn't crochet. And she's like, "Oh, that star stitch is a super fun stitch. Here, like, here's some links to it." So I've been researching how to do it, and I have really been enjoying it. It's just super, super pretty, like these round stars, and in these and the pattern has like these ridged lines in between that keep it um each row separated. And look at this. I got this. It's like a yarn thing
that's
so that my yarn doesn't roll off of my lap and everywhere. Um, anyway,
It looks like
so
your blanket looks like Neapolitan ice cream.
that's what I was thinking.
it does kind of, doesn't it? Like very very cottage chic muted pale versions of Neapolitan ice cream. Yeah. I did not think of that when I got the yarn, but here we are. So it's going to be my yummy ice cream blanket, I guess. That's what we're going to call it. Oh, and I have to show you this. Do you see this little ring?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have one of those.
You do? I love it. It keeps the tension in the yarn so that you're not like loose stitches, tight stitches. Anyway, so I know that today's session is not about crocheting, but we have to do our little crocheting catch up. Um, if you're watching right now, then obviously this is a really good time as we transition into this morning's topic for Coffee and Clarity, for you to hit share or like or follow and subscribe on whatever page, whether it's YouTube, because I send this over to YouTube too, but or each of our Facebook pages. This is the perfect time to hit share and pass this forward as we get started so that, tell the algorithms that this is something that other people should watch. And that's where you get to help us out because, the algorithms don't care what we think. It only cares what the watchers think, right? So this morning, if it's morning where you are, I know sometimes we have people from all over, and it may not be morning where you are. Um, but right now, we are going to talk about how to know when you need to get outside help. Because this is a question as coaches we get a lot, right? Just like even people who aren't signing up for coaching yet, they're just like, okay, how how do I know if it's bad enough? How do I know if it's time? I was just reading messages from a woman who had gone to her pastors, and the pastors were like, well, you need to come do couples counseling with us. And they were not supportive of any other path. And so then she's asking like, okay, I don't feel like couples counseling is safe. I don't feel like I'm going to be heard. I feel like it's going to make things worse. What should I do? So that leaves us with kind of a really big question for Christian women, for women of faith, and the occasional guy out there who watches. Because I have some male clients, and there are men who go through this too. But regardless of gender, if you're sitting here and you're watching this and you're thinking, okay, I just don't know if it's okay to get help. I think a really great starter question is, do you need your pastor's permission to get help? Do you need the clearance, the rubber stamp of approval that it's actually bad enough in a third party leader's perspective before you can go get professional input?
Mhm.
So, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I
What's
think
your experience with that been?
my thought is if you're at the point of asking the question, the answer is likely yes.
Mhm.
And I think it's so easy for us who have been ingrained in certain church cultures.
Wait. The answer is likely yes. Yes, you need your pastor's permission, or
Ah, thank
yes,
you
you
for
need help,
clarifying.
or yes. What is the answer yes to?
Thank you for that. Yeah, no, yes, you probably need to seek the help that you need,
Hmm.
regardless of other people's permission. So, yeah, the ultimate idea there is I'm taking ownership of me for me and seeking out what I need
Hmm.
in this situation, um, the clarity that I need.
Gotcha.
And
Yes.
I think so, if we've been engulfed in a religious culture that tells us, forgive 70 times 7, don't keep a record of wrongs, um, and that marriage is about making you holy, not happy,
Hmm.
then it can be hard to put any trust in that feeling of something is wrong, I might need help.
Oh, especially if you've been taught your whole life that your heart is wicked and deceitful, so your assumption is that your intuition and instincts are lying to you, right?
Right. But when you continue to have that creep up, despite all your best attempts to shove it
Hmm.
down or to put those verses or beliefs over it so that it goes away, if it's not
Hmm.
going away, that's when I would say, yeah, go ahead and investigate.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask a question that listeners may be or viewers may be asking. Are you saying we don't need to forgive?
No.
I mean, I know what you're saying, but
Yeah.
when we talk about the issues that come with teachings like forgive 70 times 7, just don't bring up the past, don't dredge up frustrations. That doesn't It can sound to some people like we're saying, hey, you don't need to forgive. You could just be bitter. You don't need to worry about setting aside anything. You don't need to worry about moving forward or moving on. And I think it's really important to point out that that is not what that's the opposite extreme is
Mm,
not the solution to
right,
what we're talking about. We're outlining here two very polar opposite extremes. Neither of those is healthy.
right. I think we're so trained to think a feeling or belief, and then we have to apply a conclusion right away. Especially if there's this religious framework of what the conclusion should be, forgive.
Mhm. Right.
And what I like to think about is like creating just a little bit of space between those two
Hmm.
things, because that opens up the possibility that you can
Right.
feel and work through something on your way to forgiveness, and
Hmm.
maybe start believing that God might be okay with that too. He's not waiting for you to just jump to a conclusion you're not ready for yet.
Right. Well, and I think also we have to talk about what actually constitutes forgiveness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, does forgiveness mean trusting quickly
Mm-mm.
when there hasn't been any proof of safety or change? No. Um, so let's loop back to how do you know when, what are the signs that we can look for when we are trying to discern whether or not we're actually in a situation that needs help? Emily, do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think particularly when we're stuck in this swirling abusive vortex.
Hmm.
Sometimes victims can gaslight themselves and try to convince themselves that they're not in an abusive situation, but the body doesn't lie. The body will always
Hmm.
tell the truth. And that can look like physical illness. That could look like somatic responses to trauma, such as anxiety or panic attacks
Hmm.
or flashbacks or things like that. And so I personally, um, with my coaching clients, I have had multiple clients who have scheduled just an intake session because they were confused and
Right.
they weren't sure if what they were living in was abuse. And they would
Right.
describe that to me and they would describe their situation and they were like, is this actually abuse? I've not had a single client that asked that question who wasn't in an abusive situation.
Right. I think
And
that's
I
a really
completely
big.
agree with Deb. If you're at that point where you're starting to question, it's your body
Mhm.
telling you something is wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and we can really trust that for sure.
Yeah. And I think for me, very often when I'm working with clients, I can tell whether or not they are living in an abusive, unhealthy environment. Often, most quickly, from simply the physical symptoms they describe about themselves. So if you're dealing with situations like, let's just say you're listening right now and you're dealing with situations like a really big increase in brain fog, a really big drop in your ability to sleep well. So now you've got insomnia, you're dealing with maybe some autoimmune issues, or you've been to the doctor for two or three different things, and they keep telling you that your labs and your blood work and everything else comes back fine, but you still don't feel fine. um, Mysterious issues, chronic fatigue, forgetfulness. Maybe you used to be super on top of things and super organized, and now you just feel like you're constantly running behind everything. Um, when your physical and psychological and emotional condition is deteriorating, something isn't right. Now, it could be, I mean, maybe you have an unexplained physical illness. That could be, right? I don't know your situation if you're watching this. Um, but it's also very common that when women are dealing with things, or men, when people are dealing with things like this, these mysterious emotional, psychological, physical decline, they are living in subtle but debilitating, destructive environments. So if this is you and you're experiencing these things, it's time to get some outside perspective. And that doesn't mean that you're betraying your marriage. It doesn't mean that you're betraying God. It doesn't mean that you're betraying your belief system. It means that God created you to be a healthy, thriving person. And for some reason, you are not healthy and thriving. And it is perfectly acceptable, maybe even should be considered obligatory to, to ask questions and find out what is going on with your body, what is going on with your environment, so that you can make informed decisions about what you need in order to thrive. Um, because oftentimes abuse doesn't look like what people expect. And if you don't have bruises and you don't have a reason to go to the emergency room, you don't have um, clear, defined, volatile explosions, then it can be very challenging to decide, hey, I'm living in something that is obviously unsafe. So having trained input can be really helpful. I know one of my friends realized that she was living in an abusive situation. One of the big things that helped her recognize that things weren't okay is that she had always been a very, very happy person. And she began to realize that she just always felt simmering anger. And she was becoming a consistently unhappy, irritable, angry person. And she's like, this is not right. This is not who I am. This is not a reflection of my true personality, my true self. Something isn't right. And I have to dig into this.
Well, sometimes, not always, but sometimes when you're in an abusive situation, friends might mention, like, you seem different
Mhm.
and you seem consistently anxious, or
Like,
the
what is up with
light,
you? What is
the
going on?
light, the light has gone out of your eyes. Or
Hmm.
your personality seems to have changed. You're a
Yeah.
different person. You are not interested in the same things that you used to be interested in. That doesn't always happen. You don't. It's not always so obvious that others are bringing it up. But I've seen that too, and I've witnessed it in my own friends who I've seen
Mhm.
um, before they were in an abusive relationship and then after. And like, holy cow, the difference of their personality is drastic.
Mhm.
And when they come out of that abusive situation, it's like their true self can actually finally bubble to the surface and flourish. And it's a
Right.
beautiful thing to watch. But
Yes.
seeing that contrast of like, oh wow, you were so, so different when you were trapped in that abuse. And
Mhm.
so if friends are starting to make comments like that, that can also be a clue that something is up.
Yeah. I know for me, one of the really big things that I began to realize, and honestly, this was like 10, 11 years into it, like years into it. But I remember there being a very definitive time where it hit me that I didn't have any, how would I even put it? I didn't have any dreams anymore. I don't mean nighttime dreams. I mean, there was nothing that I was eagerly anticipating. I felt excitement about nothing. I felt Anticipation, none.
Mhm.
Um, Planning a vacation didn't make me happy. Didn't make me like, that sense of eagerness, like, oh my goodness, I can't wait until this summer when we're going to do this, this, and this with the kids. Or um, I have this vision to expand this thing in my job and make it better. Or I'm getting ready to start this particular program at work and or at church, and I'm looking forward to this concert. Or Christmas is just 2 months away, and I'm really excited that it's going to be here soon. And I'm thinking about gifts that I want to get. None. I felt dead inside.
Mm.
I felt no anticipation, no excitement, no um anything.
The body was just trying to survive that day.
Mm.
Yeah, I was just getting through each day, and there was nothing left for me to feel excited about future or dreams or anticipation or eagerness. And that was a big wake up call to me because I had always been a future thinking person. Now, some people, I know we're all different. Some people very much live in the present. Me, I live in the future in my head. I can completely lose track of everything. I will forget to eat for a day. I will like lose track of all kinds of things um, in the moment because I'm always thinking in the future, like planning. So when that died for me, that was a big, big deal. Um, Now, other people might be people who live in the present a lot. Like some people are wired where like today's plans are a big deal, right? And they live in the present. I can't relate, but I know that people like that exist. And thinking about that means, if you stop feeling enthusiastic about what you're doing today, like if that sense dies for you or it feels numbed out, that's another thing that would be equivalent to me losing interest in the future, right?
Mm.
Because you can disassociate your current reality. And I
Or
think,
your future planning.
yes, well, and I think sometimes social media can play a role in this too, where we
Hmm.
get sucked into the fantasy worlds that we see other individuals living. And I mean,
Yep.
what we see are their highlights, and we dream or we imagine what their life might be like.
Right.
It's twisted because we don't actually live in their shoes.
Hmm.
We don't really know. But I think one thing that some survivors go through is they disassociate from their present circumstance and they hyper focus on what their life would be like if they lived in this other person's shoes and had this like fairy tale.
Mm.
That's another response we
That's
have.
like when we are comparing our bloopers to other people's highlight reel. So we're watching their sizzle reel and their highlights. It's like their movie trailer, all the best things. And then we're comparing that against our behind the scenes cuts, the stuff that got left on the chopped it out and left on the floor of the editing room. Oh my.
Mm.
So when we feel like something isn't right, something isn't right enough to get to the point that we need to ask somebody for help. Next steps. What do we do then?
Mhm.
Where do we go?
Well, did you say Deb? Oh, or
No,
then?
I said, what do we do then? Where do we go?
The
Sorry,
process.
I'm kind of throwing the question out there for
Yeah.
discussion. Like, and obviously, if you're watching and you have thoughts about this or you've experienced this, this is a perfect time to drop a comment underneath. And if you have questions too, we'll gladly answer any questions that you may have too.
Mhm.
I mean, there are a lot of different directions. A lot of my clients started by researching what abuse looked like, either through some
Hmm.
social media platforms like the platforms that the three of us have, where we bring a lot of
Right.
awareness, or they get a book that really opens their eyes to the
Hmm.
situation that they're in. And
Yeah.
then, I mean, we're all coaches. Something else that we go through is those first intake sessions with clients where they just book one because they're like,
Right.
I'm not sure about my situation.
Hmm.
I don't know if I really need this. And then it's like the floodgates open up, and they have this safe
Never.
place to be
Right.
able to really share.
Hmm.
And as they are sharing, I think they realize, like, oh wow, there is a lot more stuff than maybe I
Right.
was realizing. And I really encourage individuals who are who follow our platforms or that are watching our live streams. Like, if you're starting to have those questions, schedule an intake session. Like, it doesn't, you don't even have
Right.
to make that full blown commitment yet. You can just be
Hmm.
like, let me just try one session
Just
and
want to ask some
yeah,
questions.
just ask some
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
And you might be surprised, where you might think a situation you're going in might not be that bad, but we
Hmm.
might be able to provide some statistics for you, or we might be able to validate your experience and say, no, you are not
Right.
losing one hair. Like, that is a
Yeah.
completely valid thing to be very stressed over or
Right.
whatnot.
Right. Yeah. And also one of the things that we do with each of our intakes is a danger and lethality assessment, because
Yes.
sometimes people don't realize. I've had so many clients come in and they're like, well, I think it's not that big of a deal, but then they're sky high on their danger assessment. And it's like, okay, so let's talk about the things that are happening in your life that are making you at high risk for homicide, for other things that could be um, extremely dangerous. And then how do we get safe? And of course, there are others who are not in a high physical danger risk, but emotionally and psychologically, they are just being torn apart. Um, I did a workshop on how to know when a relationship is bad enough. I'll drop the link here, actually. It's called Righteous or Rotten: How to Know Whether Your Relationship is Bad Enough to Actually Do Anything About. And hold on a second. Let me copy it correctly. I'm going to drop this in the comments here so that anybody who wants to check it out can. I see a comment here from Nicole. I suffered in silence a long time, and when I finally went to a church bishop for help, the abuse only got worse because how dare I break my husband's privacy? Nicole, I'm so sorry. I know that that happens to a lot of people. And that's one of the reasons why we provide confidential private clarity coaching to help you get that clarity from a neutral, confidential point of view, trauma informed, trauma sensitive, because bishops, pastors, priests most often are not trained in this, and you don't know where their loyalties are going to lie, right? You just don't know where they're going to end up as
I
far as their
know
response is concerned.
I know of survivors who have gone to their clergy, and the clergy member's response was, well, my job is to fight for the marriage.
Right. Doesn't matter if you're safe or not,
Mhm.
just the institution matters. Yeah.
Yes. So that's not going to be the same, obviously, with all clergy. Thankfully,
Right.
there are some safe individuals who have had training and
Hmm.
who understand, pardon me, they understand abuse dynamics, but many clergy are not trained in this.
Not many,
Not
most.
many. Yeah, most, yes,
Most
yes.
are not. Most are not. And there
Yes.
are some wonderful ones that we are grateful for, and we don't want to lump them in, but most are not. Sorry, keep going. I just had to
Yes, yes,
caveat that.
you are correct. And so I think I think sometimes it makes complete sense that survivors go to their pastor, they go to their
Mhm,
priest because they are looking for someone who will validate their experience and who will provide help. But as you said, most are not trained. And so they try, like, well, we can do some marriage counseling. I mean, that is not what they are there for. They have theological training,
not
and
counselor
they
training,
are not
yes.
counselors. They are not therapists. And a clergy member
But
with
also, these are not
proper,
marriage problems.
they're not marriage problems. Yes. And if you have a clergy member has proper training, they're going to recommend that you seek a professional that can actually assist with your specific concerns.
Mhm,
Um, we do not recommend marriage counseling when there are abusive dynamics happening because it tends to amplify the abuse. It tends to give language to the abuser that they can then weaponize.
mhm,
Many survivors who go through that find ganged up on, where they find a counselor or sometimes even a therapist has almost buddied up with the abusive individual against the victim. So we
mhm.
really recommend survivors seek their own professional to work with privately,
Yeah,
confidentially,
yes.
to work through some of these issues.
Yeah, and just to get that clarity.
Mm-hmm.
My
Um,
thought is also that a lot of clergy are, they will see this as a new issue that
mm,
needs to be addressed with the Matthew 18 approach that says if you've got an issue with someone, go to them directly and then see how that goes. And if it doesn't go well, then bring someone else in and then bring the church in later. And they're not recognizing that we are 10, 20 years into daily trying to confront
right.
and trying all different ways to contort ourselves to say, will
Mhm.
you hear me now? Will you change now? Will you listen to me now if I approach you this way?
Right.
So they're often just coming from a completely different starting point than what we actually need. I've seen
Well,
that.
because it's fresh for them,
Right.
it's new information to them, so they're treating it like it's new information for you.
Right. And I think it warrants explaining a little bit more of what you said, Sarah, about it's not a marriage issue. Because I think when
Mhm.
we're at
Go
this
for it.
initial stage, we really feel like it is a marriage issue and that we just need better tools to understand each other. I just need better tools, better ways to approach him so he'll actually listen or he'll actually want to change.
Mhm.
But you've talked about it being an entitlement issue, an integrity issue. If
Mhm.
one party is continually, habitually treating someone else poorly in a destructive manner and
Mhm.
not being open to any feedback, not
Right.
receiving any attempts to repair, not having empathy for the other, and that is a decision that they're making repeatedly.
Yes.
So it's not something that is a marriage issue where, if you both just learn some better tools,
Right.
um, it's a complete imbalance at that point, and it is more one person's issue than the partnership.
Right. Well, in that, so I think I can kind of make a list, a bit of a list. It's just like, okay, so if you are experiencing a relationship where there is deception, and I don't mean, oops, I forgot to pick up the bananas at the grocery store. I mean, ongoing deception where someone is putting effort into making sure you don't know things about their life. If there's ongoing deception, if there's ongoing infidelity, um, of any kind, and by ongoing, I don't mean that infidelity one time isn't a problem. It is. But I'm including, for example, porn use, um, emotional affairs. That goes back to secrecy, like relationships that are secret. Um, if there's angry, violent, explosive types of situations happening that are not occasional. Okay, let me try to rephrase this because it may sound like I think I've set this up poorly. Hold on. Let me back up. Um, when there is a pattern of angry, explosive types of behavior, and I'm saying that carefully. I'm trying to say that carefully because we all have bad days sometimes, right? We all have times where everything has gone wrong at work. The engine on the car blew up at home. We come home and I don't know, the water main burst and there's water in the house and we just lose it. Like that is not the same thing as having an ongoing pattern that is volatile, that is angry, that is aggressive, that is scaring the people in your home. So what I'm trying to do here, and I feel like I'm not doing it as well as I have at some points, but what I'm trying to do here is differentiate from the times that we have normal humanity and normal failures to be as kind and patient as we might want to be versus consistent patterns of behavior that are creating fear and anxiety and problematic relationships in the environment of our home and our family. So, anytime you have these ongoing patterns, if you are living in fear, then it is not love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no fear in love. And anytime you have those things going on, then our whole approach needs to be trying to figure out how we can pursue safety.
Mm-hmm. I think in terms of the Gottmans and Fight Right,
Yes.
where you're describing a healthy relationship
Hmm.
will have two people putting in the effort to turn toward each other repeatedly, even if there are
Yes.
perpetual fights that happen because you're two different human beings that have different sets of values around different things, but
Right.
learn how to have those arguments in a way that's respectful and kind,
Hmm.
and you both have moments where you are attempting a repair and being
Yes. That
empathetic.
that attempt to repair. Hmm.
Yes. And they talk about this 5-to-1 ratio, um,
Yes.
positive to negative, both within and outside of arguments, that as a whole, is your relationship tending more toward the positive, where
Mhm.
someone is putting up a bid for
Connection.
connection
Hmm.
over big and little things, and those are being responded to positively 5 times more than they are not.
Negatively. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I think thank you for helping me rephrase that because really what I was trying to focus on there is the fact that there needs to be place and space for us to be human and to
Yeah.
make mistakes and to screw up and to say sorry and to fix it and to repair. We're not talking about the requirement of any relationship needing to be perfection, um, but also having a place and space for recognizing that patterns can show that someone is not committed to repair and to trying. Um, I'm going to put the Gottman's book link here because this is a book that we all highly recommend. Um, and I also wanted to kind of go back. We have Susie that left a comment here. She said her first pastor said he didn't understand. I have mentioned abuse for years. I didn't have bruises. I said the bruises are on the inside. He has said he isn't abusive. He's evil. Okay, I don't know how that excuses anything, but anyway, the second pastor wanted me to seek forgiveness because I was angry with my husband. I said, "So you want me to seek forgiveness for his abuse and betrayals?" Um, and that is something we see very often, where clergy will push someone to say sorry for having a healthy response to unhealthy behavior
Mhm.
instead of addressing the unhealthy behavior. And that is um, a very big red flag, a warning sign.
Mhm.
I think in general, clergy tend to see most situations as moral issues. We see this on all kinds of spectrums, even to the extreme, when criminal behavior is reported to a clergy member, and instead of reporting to the proper authorities, they see it as just a moral issue, and so it's dealt with within the church. But
Mhm.
then non-criminal behavior as well, and so we see this a lot. You brought up addiction, Sarah. Particularly pornography addiction is often
Mhm.
seen as just a moral issue within the church. It is not seen as a betrayal issue. It is not seen as abuse. And so
Right.
they tend to just focus on the morality of it and focus instead of working with trained individuals, instead of seeing it as an addiction, instead of making sure that the individual who's been betrayed is receiving proper support. Instead, they just like
Right.
focus in and turn everything into this hyper spiritualized issue. And we see that with abuse,
Mhm.
particularly. And so, not only do clergy um, will reframe abusive behavior as only moral issues, but they will also look at the victim and put the same burden of responsibility on the victim and say, well, your part is you haven't forgiven. So they see it as equal, that the victim's so-called unforgiveness is just as big of an issue as the abusive behavior that they are experiencing.
I want to take that a step further
Yeah.
because my brain, like the synapses in my brain are exploding right now, like Fourth of July fireworks. I don't know. I'm questioning the use of the term that they're you addressing it as a moral issue because I think if they truly thought it was a big moral issue, they'd actually want to do something about stopping the behavior.
Mhm.
I feel like in many situations, the part that is addressed as a moral issue is the victim's response,
Yes. Mhm.
not the actual abusive behavior, not the exploitation, not the deception, not the infidelity, whatever it is. Those are often addressed as um, very redeemable, but the response of the victim is addressed as not redeemable at all. They need to pull it together. And I think that there is an underlying there. Well, I'm gonna drop a bomb here. You guys can tell me if this is a lead bomb or a nuclear one. I think there are two underlying motivations. There could be others, but there are two that occur to me. When leaders, clergy, etc., respond to the victim's reaction to abuse as being the bigger issue, I think that they are actually identifying themselves with the abuser and wanting to be treated as they would want someone else to treat them if they had done these harmful things. Instead of, so this is the first one, instead of identifying themselves with the victim, and saying, if someone had done these things to me, this is the justice I would want others in power to pursue on my behalf.
Mhm.
Instead, they tend to focus on, if I had done this to someone else, this is the mercy I would want someone to extend to me on my behalf. So their instinctive identity connection and sense of sameness is allied with the abuser.
Mhm.
The second thing that I see very often is that when you have clergy or leaders dealing with a situation where there is a victim of harm and a perpetrator of harm, I think that often subconsciously, I don't think that this is necessarily overt or on purpose, but subconsciously, they know that the more dangerous person is the abuser. And they are scared of what that person might do if they are forced to be held accountable. Because the more litigious person is likely to be the abuser, not the victim. The person who's more likely to try to file a lawsuit or go on a smear campaign or whatever is going to be the person who is the abusive person. So, subconsciously, in order to mollify and appease the situation and keep the profile of the problem as low as possible, they subconsciously know that the more manipulatable person is the victim, the more easily intimidated person is the victim, and the scarier person is the abuser. So the path of least resistance is to try to keep the victim silent so that the abuser doesn't go on the warpath against the church or the organization or the leadership because they are now being suddenly held accountable for their actions. So when someone tries to silence the victim, very often it is because subconsciously they are also scared of what the abuser might do to them,
Mhm.
which tells you that they know the abuser is a scary person. The
Mhm.
abuser is the one who needs to be kept happy and not triggered into a more volatile response against the organization. So to go back and recap those two, I see two potential um, underlying responses. One is that the leadership tends to mentally and emotionally align their identity with that of the abuser, their role in the situation. They are, if they're imagining themselves in the situation, they imagine themselves being the person in the abuser's shoes. And second, that they know that the abuser instinctively they know the abuser is the dangerous scary person, and so they will do backflips to keep the abuser happy because they sense that the victim is more likely to go away quietly than the abuser will.
And I see a third one too.
Okay, go for it.
So I think the third one is in certain, um, not the word, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not congregation, certain denominations
Hmm.
that tend to align a bit more on a patriarchal side,
Sure.
will also, there is this belief that since the husband is appointed by God as the leader, that if is the wife is doing everything right, if she is
Hmm.
respecting him enough, if she is sweet and supportive and she doesn't complain, and if she's acting the right way, there's this belief that he will automatically rise to be this amazing godly
Uh-huh.
leader. And
Right.
so I think a lot of the blame in abusive relationships where the husband is the perpetrator and the wife is the victim, in those patriarchal churches, it's often put on the wife because it's like, well, if you change your behavior, then he will rise up and be the leader that you want him to be.
That's along the lines that I was thinking too as I listened to Sarah. It's almost like both of those responses come from that same line of thinking in my mind. So the pastor, the clergy person,
Mhm.
is going to align themselves more with the abuser if their primary mindset is what you just described, more patriarchal, male headship,
Mhm.
man is right. I'm going to default to believing him first. So I'm going to align myself with him first. I think the other side of that is defaulting to believing that women are more gullible because Eve
Mhm.
was deceived in the garden, and so therefore all women are more susceptible to making up stories. And
Mhm.
That's what they say.
right, that's what they say.
Deb.
Right.
That's
Right.
what they
You're not
say.
presenting
No,
that
I'm
as
not.
a
mm,
factual, you're quoting how others may present
Right.
it.
I'm seeing how they would
Right.
get there because of that underlying.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think so. Let's loop this back to our main topic, and that is how to know when you need to get outside help. And that
Mhm.
is very much if you are recognizing that perhaps your leadership is not able to discern what's going on, you need outside help.
Mhm.
If you are recognizing that things are just not um, not getting better, no matter how much you have tried. Like Susie just dropped a comment here, when winning the other person with a like a quiet spirit. If that hasn't been working, then maybe you need some outside input. If your body is in breakdown and you're deteriorating mentally, emotionally, physically, it's time to get some outside input and clarity. Um, and I think that this our session today is just like a really big permission blank check. Give yourself permission to ask questions, to seek wisdom, to get clarity, to figure out what your best options are. And sometimes that is actually best done by looking at what a relationship that's healthy is supposed, and dropped in the comments a link to Systems of Love and Honor, which is just a quick visual guide to recognizing safe relationships. And a lot of times when I'm working with clients, they may or may not be able to see abuse that's happening. But if you sit down and you look at what a safe relationship should look like, and they're like, I don't have that. I don't know what that looks like. I've never experienced this. This isn't here. Um, all of a sudden, the emptiness of what is healthy, the absence of what should be there becomes very clear and obvious.
I was
Mhm.
thinking about that earlier, Sarah, when you were talking a bit about what healthy relationships can look like. And there's room for
Mhm.
everybody having a bad day at times. And you might snap, you might even
Yes.
roll up at your spouse. Something that sets healthy relationships aside is what the repair looks like. So,
Yes.
so-called repair in an abusive relationship is going to include a lot of manipulation. It's going to look like a lot of justification, a lot of flipping it around and blaming the other person. But repair in a healthy relationship looks like taking full ownership, not making excuses. You might be able to say, like, look, I was just mega stressed because such and such, but my behavior was unacceptable, and taking full ownership
Right.
for that,
Yeah.
and seeking to empathize with your spouse after you have harmed them.
Mhm.
And then the other huge thing that we see in healthy relationships versus abusive relationships is, in a healthy relationship, you should be able to go to your partner with a complaint, and they should be able
Mhm.
to receive it. So I think
Right.
that's a huge red flag and a sign that you might need to
Mhm.
seek some additional help or seek a consultation with a abuse recovery coach, is when you cannot approach your partner with an issue, a problem that you have with their behavior was something that you want changed.
And be heard.
Because they will either blow up or they will turn it back around on you or whatnot. If they are not a safe person to take your complaints to, you need some outside help.
I think piggybacking on that, my thought was my own personal experience where I was starting to clue into things not being right. I was looking at books. I was looking at social media. I was trying to decide for myself, like, is this just a personality quirk or is this all the way to abuse? That feels like a really heavy allegation. I don't know if I can call it that. And
Right.
somewhere along the line, there was an escalation in behavior that triggered for me this sense of panic that, okay, if this is where we're heading, who
Mhm.
in my life has any clue? Nobody.
Mhm. Yeah.
I wasn't completely disconnected from people. I thought I had good relationships, but they were very packaged according to what the abuser wanted it to look like. It
Mhm.
wasn't that I was fully able to be open and vulnerable with even my closest people. So I think
Right.
a lot of us have to have a little bit of that aha moment to have that
Mhm.
fire enough to push us to seeking help. For me, that
Yeah.
was recognizing that if my life burnt down right now, no one would have a clue,
Mhm.
and I needed
Yeah.
to make sure that wasn't the case. Um, we want to be here having this
Yeah.
conversation to hopefully help you who are listening avoid getting to that point. If you're hearing and feeling those stirrings inside,
Right.
go ahead and
Yeah.
seek the
Exactly.
information and the help and the support that you need.
Yeah. And there is no way to resolve conflict, I see Susie saying. Um, with all the tactics they throw at you, it gets circular. Yes. So if you feel like things just go in circles and they don't get resolved, that's a huge warning sign. And I wanted to piggyback on what you said earlier, Emily, too, and that is the whole concept of repair. Um, it's not only repair after a rupture in the relationship, it's also um, that the same patterns shouldn't be just looping over and over and over and over again. So when something is repaired, you're both working toward not repeating it. It doesn't mean that you won't make mistakes, but the focus is on we don't want to keep doing this. We don't want to keep repeating this. Um, Now, I just want to throw this up here. We would love to work with any of you who are watching, or if you have a friend who you're observing these things happening in their life and you're like, hey, you know what? I think my friend needs some clarity. I think my friend needs to check out something. There may be someone in your life that you love and care about, and you see things happening, and maybe they haven't figured it out for themselves yet. You can always gift a session if you want to gift an intake session. Um, but you can learn more about Coach Deb, Coach Emily, myself, and we have some new coaches coming on soon whose names will also be up on our Wild Coaching website. But with our Wild Coaching team, there are a lot of options, a lot of different areas of emphasis and specialty that can meet different needs. And this is how you can connect with any of us in order to learn how to do more in your situation. I also just want to throw out if you would like really great discounts on one-to-one sessions, the best way to do that is to join the Scoop, which is my hour monthly group coaching sessions. And you get access to a whole slew of workshops at no extra charge. And it's just a terrific, terrific resource. So you can find out more about that. And just opened a 7-day free trial so that you can see and then move forward.
You're getting choppy, Sarah.
It looks maybe this
We may have lost Sarah.
No.
I'm letting her know.
oh my, are we back?
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
You back? Y'all
Yep.
were for me. Okay, well, sorry about that. Yeah. All right. Last thoughts though before we finish.
Also, I see a comment by Susie. Is this
Anybody
recorded?
else?
Yes, this is being recorded on our social media platforms, on YouTube for Sarah, I think on Facebook for me and Deb. So you can go
All
back
of
and
our
watch it
pages
later.
yeah, absolutely. You can just share this link or you can hop over to YouTube and share it from there too. So anything else, Deb? Anything else? No, we're
No,
good.
I think we're
Well,
good.
guys, thank you. Thank you for joining us today as we've talked about how to know when it's time to get help, how to know when it's time to get information from an outside source and get some outside input on your situation. I hope this has been helpful. Please subscribe, share it, pass it on, and let us know if you have any questions. We would love to work with you. Bye, everybody.